All right, so you're prepping for a Honey Extractor interview. Sounds pretty sweet. We've got all sorts of research here. Career guides, interview tips, even some stuff about this AI platform RoleCatcher. Let's get right to it.
Yeah, preparing for an interview like this can be pretty interesting. We can really dig into what makes someone a great candidate and help you figure out how to show off what you know.
So before we get into the nitty-gritty, what does a Honey Extractor actually do?
Well, a honey extractor runs the machines that take the honey out of the honeycomb. It's a super important part of making honey, and it requires being really precise, knowing how the equipment works, and caring about quality.
And it looks like there are a good amount of jobs out there for this. This career guide, Honey Extractor, the complete career guide, says that more and more people want honey and organic foods these days.
That's totally true. People are definitely more into natural and organic stuff, and that's making honey more popular. So if you're a good honey extractor, it's a pretty stable job market, maybe even growing.
That's awesome. This guide also says that you don't always need a fancy degree, but hands-on experience is a big deal.
Yeah, some employers might want you to have some kind of official training in food processing or something, but a lot of them really care about experience. Working with experienced extractors, going to workshops, maybe even having some beekeeping experience yourself that shows you really get it.
Makes sense. So let's talk about the interview itself. What are some of the typical questions you might get asked?
One of the first things they'll probably ask is, can you tell me about your experience with honey extractors? This is your chance to highlight what you know and the skills you've learned that relate to the job.
So it's not just about listing the jobs you've had. It's about tailoring my answer to show them I've got what they're looking for.
Exactly. Like if you've worked with those radial extractors and they mention those in the job description, make sure you emphasize that. You could say something like, at my last job at previous company name, I was in charge of running and maintaining radial extractors. I got a lot of experience loading and unloading the honeycombs, watching over the process, and making sure the final product was good quality.
Okay, so I'm making a clear connection between what I've done and what they need.
Right. Now, they might follow up with something like, what were some of the problems you ran into working with extractors, and how did you handle them? This is where you show off your problem-solving skills.
I see. So I need to have a good story ready to go. What kind of situation would show I can think on my feet?
Think about a time when something didn't go as planned. Maybe the extractor broke down, or you had to do things differently for a different type of honeycomb.
Right. So instead of just saying, I never had any problems, I should give a specific example of how I dealt with a tricky situation.
Exactly. Like you could say, one time during our busiest season, one of the extractors started to overheat. I quickly looked at the manual, figured out what was probably wrong, and cooled the motor down. I also told the maintenance guys about it and suggested we start checking all the extractors regularly to prevent that from happening again. This meant we didn't lose much time, and it stopped future problems.
That's a really good way to show I can think critically and take initiative. What other kinds of questions should I expect?
Another one they ask a lot is, can you walk me through the steps of extracting honey? It might seem simple, but they're looking for more than just the basic stuff.
Okay, so I need to show them I really understand the process. What details should I focus on?
You could start with a quick overview, like, it usually starts with taking the frames out of the beehives. Then, you uncap the honeycombs to get to the honey. You put the frames into the extractor, and it spins the honey out using centrifugal force. Finally, you collect the honey, filter it, and store it.
That's a good start. But how can I make my answer stand out?
Think about the techniques and little things you've learned on the job. For example, you could say, I've learned that the honey's temperature is super important during extraction. If it's too cold, it's hard to get out, and if it's too hot, it can mess up the quality. Keeping the right temperature makes extraction go smoothly and protects the honey's flavor.
So it's about showing I understand the stuff that can affect the process.
You got it. And they might ask you more questions about it. They could ask about problems you've had during extraction or how you changed your approach depending on the type of honey or how the honeycombs looked.
This is going to be a lot to think about. Sounds like getting ready beforehand is key to doing well in this interview.
Totally. And that's where RoleCatcher can really help you out.
I'm curious about how RoleCatcher can help me, especially for this interview.
It uses AI to look at job descriptions and give you feedback on your answers. It helps you figure out what skills and experience the employer really wants and suggests ways to emphasize those things in your answers.
So it's kind of like having a coach to help me come up with the best answers possible.
Exactly. It can also point out any parts of your answers that might not be so strong and help you make them better. You can practice answering questions like the ones we're talking about and get feedback from the AI so you know you're on the right track.
That's awesome. So it's not just about knowing the answers, it's about saying them in a way that really connects with the interviewer.
You got it. RoleCatcher can help you get better at communicating and make sure you're showing off your knowledge and enthusiasm.
This is all super helpful. I'm feeling a lot more confident about those interview questions now. What else should we talk about to make sure I'm ready?
Let's move on to another really important part. Taking care of and cleaning the equipment. This is where you show them you're careful and that you understand how important hygiene is.
Okay, I'm ready to talk about keeping those extractors spotless. What kinds of questions can I expect about that?
They might ask, how do you take care of and clean honey extractors? This is where you describe how you clean things and how you pay attention to details.
All right, so I should explain my cleaning process step by step. What are some important things to mention?
Definitely make sure to explain how you clean and sanitize everything thoroughly. For example, you could say, after each use, I rinse the extractor with warm water to get rid of any leftover honey. Then, I take it apart the baskets, lids, valves, and wash everything with hot, soapy water. I'm extra careful with the spots where honey could build up and crystallize.
Okay, so I'm showing them I'm thorough about cleaning. What about sanitizing?
Yes. Add that in. You could say, once everything is clean, I sanitize it with a food-grade sanitizer. This makes sure there are no bacteria or anything else bad on the surfaces. Then, I let everything air dry completely before putting the extractor back together.
So I'm showing that I know it's important to not just clean, but to sanitize everything to keep things hygienic.
Exactly. And they might also ask about specific maintenance stuff that's not just regular cleaning.
Like what? What other things should I be looking out for?
Think about preventative maintenance, you could say. Before and after I use it, I check the extractor for any wear and tear. I listen to the motor for weird noises or vibrations and make sure all the moving parts are lubricated. If I see anything wrong, I fix it right away to prevent any breakdowns.
That's a smart way to show that I'm proactive and that I care about keeping the equipment in perfect shape.
Right. Remember, you want to show them that you understand how important good maintenance and hygiene are for both the equipment and the honey.
This is really good advice. It makes me realize how much attention to detail this job requires.
For sure. A honey extractor isn't just running machines. They make sure the honey is high quality and pure.
Speaking of quality, what kind of questions should I expect about making sure the honey is the best it can be?
They might ask something like, how do you make sure the honey is good quality and pure during the extraction process? This is when you get to show off what you know about best practices and how much you care about making great honey.
Okay, I'm ready to impress them with my honey knowledge. What are the key things to mention?
Start by reminding them that you're all about cleanliness. You could say, like I mentioned before, I'm really careful about cleaning and sanitizing the extractor before and after I use it so nothing gets contaminated. I also handle the honeycombs gently to avoid damaging them or adding impurities.
So hygiene is number one. What else?
Talk about using separate tools and containers that are only for honey, you could say. I always use clean tools and containers that are just for honey, so there's no chance of anything else getting mixed in. And don't forget to mention how important temperature is during extraction and storage.
Right. Temperature is a big deal for honey quality.
Absolutely, you could say. Keeping the temperature right during extraction and storage is really important. If it's too cold, the honey is hard to get out, and if it's too warm, the flavor and texture can get messed up. I always follow the guidelines for the right temperature.
That's a great point. It shows them, I understand the science behind extracting honey. What if they ask about specific techniques to make sure the honey is pure, like filtering?
You could say, after extracting the honey, I filter it through a fine mesh strainer to get rid of any little bits of beeswax or other stuff. That way the honey is clear and pure. You can also mention if you've ever tested honey for how much water is in it or other quality checks.
Wow, there's so much more to honey extraction than I thought. I'm learning a lot from this deep dive.
There's always something new to learn about honey, and that's something you can bring up in the interview too, to show you're dedicated to learning and getting better at your job.
That's a good idea. So we've talked about a bunch of things like experience, processes, keeping things clean, and quality. What other types of questions should I get ready for?
Let's talk about problem solving and safety. Employers want to know that you can handle unexpected things and that you always prioritize safety.
All right, I'm ready to show them I can think on my feet and keep things running smoothly and safely. What kinds of questions should I be prepared for?
One they often ask is, Have you ever had a situation where the honey extractor stopped working right in the middle of things? What did you do? This is your chance to tell a story that shows how you think quickly and come up with solutions.
Okay, so I need a good example for this one. What kind of situation would really impress them?
Think about a time when you had to figure out a problem and fix it fast. Maybe the extractor was making a weird noise or one of the baskets wasn't spinning right. Tell them what happened, how you figured out what was wrong, and what you did to fix it.
I see. So it's not just about fixing the problem, but also about showing them how I think and approach problems.
Exactly. For example, you could say, one time I heard this loud grinding noise coming from the extractor. I turned it off right away to make sure it didn't get damaged and checked at the motor. It turned out a belt had come loose, and I was able to tighten it with the tools we had. That quick fix got us back up and running in no time.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
I'm showing them I can handle unexpected stuff and find practical solutions.
Exactly. Now let's shift gears and talk about safety.
Okay, safety is always super important. What kind of question might they ask to see how aware I am about safety?
They might ask, tell me about a time you had to put safety first while working with honey extractors. This is when you show how committed you are to following safety rules and creating a safe place for yourself and your coworkers.
So they want to make sure I take safety seriously and that I know what to do if things get a little dangerous. What kind of example would show them I'm all about safety?
Think about a time when you noticed something that could be a safety hazard, or when you had to correct someone else who wasn't being safe. Maybe you saw a frayed electrical cord or someone using the extractor without wearing the right protective gear.
I get it. It's about being observant, being proactive, and knowing how to address safety concerns the right way.
Exactly. For instance, you could say, I once saw a new person working on the extractor without gloves on. I stopped them right away and explained why it's so important to wear gloves to protect themselves from bee stings and cuts. I gave them a pair of gloves and made sure they knew how to put them on correctly. I also took that opportunity to go over all the safety rules with the whole team, stressing how important it is to follow them every single time.
It's a great example.
Yeah.
It shows them I care about the safety of everyone around me, not just my own.
Right. And you're showing you know how to communicate safety rules and make safety a priority in the workplace.
This deep dive has been super helpful. I'm learning so much about what it takes to be a good honey extractor.
There's always more to discover. In the next part of our deep dive, we'll tackle even tougher questions, talk about career advice, and uncover how RoleCatcher can give you an edge in your job search.
I can't wait. I'm feeling way more confident and prepared for my interview.
That's great to hear.
Stay tuned for the rest of our honey extractor interview prep.
We'll be right back. Welcome back to our deep dive into honey extractors. Last time we were talking about safety, and I was wondering, are there any special safety rules for working with honey extractors that I should know about?
Good question. Every workplace has its own rules, of course, but I guess some common ones for honey extractors would be about handling those heavy frames, using the machines, and being around bees, right?
Yeah, exactly. So if they ask you about safety in the interview, what should you focus on?
Well, I should definitely talk about wearing the right gear gloves, a veil, sturdy shoes, and I should mention being careful removing parts and knowing how to lock out the machines before doing maintenance so they don't accidentally start up.
Oh, and obviously, I need to know how to act around bees and not freak out if one gets angry.
Right. You never know what a bee might do, so you got to be ready.
Yeah.
What about questions about making decisions? The career guide says honey extractors often have to think on their feet. True. They might ask something like, tell me about a time you had to make a tough decision while working with honey extractors. It's like they want to see if I can handle being in charge and making smart choices.
Exactly. They want to see that you can think things through and handle responsibility. What kind of story would show you can do that?
I guess I need an example of a time when I had to choose between two options, and both had pros and cons. Maybe like deciding whether to stop extracting honey because something seemed off with the quality, or maybe figuring out which batch to do first when things were changing.
Perfect. Let's say you're extracting honey and you see the color change a bit in part of the batch. You could say, I was watching the honey come out and I noticed it was a little darker from a few of the frames. I thought maybe it was getting too hot or something that could affect the quality.
Okay, so I've spotted a potential issue. What did I do next?
Now tell them how you figured things out. You could say, I stopped extracting those specific frames and took some of the honey to look at it closer. I checked the temperature readings and they were fine. Then I compared the color to other batches and talked to someone more experienced. We decided the color was probably just different because of where the nectar came from and that it was fine.
So I got more information, asked someone else, and made a smart decision based on what I knew.
Exactly. And you
Yeah.
can wrap it up by saying what happened in the end. We kept extracting the honey, but we kept an eye on the color and quality. The honey turned out fine, and we didn't waste any time or honey.
That's a great story. I'm showing them I can think critically, get the facts, and make good decisions that focus on quality and efficiency.
Exactly. Now let's go back to the career guide for a sec. It talks about how important it is to keep learning in this field. How can I work that into my interview answers?
You're right. I want them to see that I want to stay updated and learn more. How can I show that during the interview?
When you talk about your experience or problems you faced, mention times when you went out of your way to learn something new. Like maybe you went to a beekeeping workshop, read industry magazines, or followed an experienced extractor around to learn a new technique.
So it's about showing them I'm always looking for ways to improve my skills.
Exactly. For example, if they ask you about working with a certain type of extractor, you could say, I've used radio extractors, but I'm really interested in learning more about tangential extractors. I've been reading about them and would love to go to a training session on how to use and maintain them.
That's a good way to show I'm curious, motivated, and want to develop my skills.
Exactly. It also shows you're adaptable and open to new technology and methods.
Okay, so I'm showing them I'm not just happy with how things are, I'm always trying to get better and learn more.
Precisely. That's something employers really like, especially in a field like honey extraction, where things are always changing with new technology and practices.
This is so helpful. I'm seeing how all the parts of the job, the technical stuff, problem solving, safety, and wanting to learn, all come together to make a great honey extractor.
For sure. And don't forget, RoleCatcher can help you tweak your answers so you highlight these qualities really well. It can figure out what keywords are important in the job description and suggest ways to use them so you show you're a perfect fit.
Oh, right. RoleCatcher can help me customize my answers for each job I apply for. It's like having a guide to help me through the interview.
Exactly. The more you practice with RoleCatcher, the more confident and ready you'll feel when you walk into that interview.
This is all great advice. I feel way more prepared to handle those interview questions now. What else should we talk about to make sure I'm ready to impress the hiring manager?
Let's talk about a key part of being a honey extractor. Making sure the extracted honey is high quality and pure. This is where you really get to show how much you know and how committed you are to making a top-notch product.
Okay, I'm ready to wow them with my honey expertise. What kind of questions should I be ready for in this area?
They might ask you something like, what do you do to ensure the honey you extract is the highest quality? It's a broad question, so you can talk about everything from the hive to the jar.
All right, so I need to think big picture. Where do I start?
Start by emphasizing how important it is to use clean and well-maintained equipment, like we talked about earlier. Repeat those steps about cleaning and sanitizing to show them you're all about hygiene right from the start.
Got it. I'm setting the stage by showing how much I care about cleanliness. What else?
Next, talk about how you handle the honey properly, you could say. I always handle the honeycombs carefully so I don't damage them or get anything in them. And I use special tools and containers that are just for honey so nothing gets mixed in.
Okay, so I'm demonstrating that I know how to prevent contamination at every step.
Exactly. And to go even further, you can talk about how honey is sensitive to temperature. You could say, I know that temperature is super important for keeping the honey good. I always keep the temperature at the right level during extraction so everything goes smoothly and the flavor and texture are perfect. And I store the honey at the right temperature too so it doesn't crystallize and stays delicious.
That's a great point. It shows them I'm not just following the rules, but that I understand why those rules exist and the science behind it.
Yeah.
What if they ask about specific techniques for ensuring purity, like filtering?
Of course, you can definitely talk about that. You could say, after I extract the honey, I filter it through a fine mesh strainer to get rid of any little pieces of beeswax, pollen, or other things. This makes sure the honey is perfectly clear and pure.
So I'm explaining how I guarantee a clean and high-quality final product. Anything else I could add to really impress them?
If you have any experience testing the honey for moisture or other quality checks, mention that. For example, you could say, at my last job, we used a refractometer to measure the water content of the honey to make sure it met the standards for quality and shelf life.
That's a good one. I'm showing them I'm familiar with the quality control methods used in the industry. What about those tricky questions that really test my problem-solving skills? I want to be prepared for anything.
You've got the right attitude. Let's dive into those problem-solving scenarios. They're not looking for you to be perfect. They want to see how you handle tough situations and find solutions.
Okay, a real-life story where I think on my feet and solve a problem. What would be a good example?
Imagine they ask, have you ever had a situation where the honey extractor broke down while you were using it? What did you do? This is a chance to show them you can stay calm, troubleshoot, and fix things.
A broken extractor sounds stressful. What kind of story would show them I can handle that kind of pressure?
Think of a time when you had a technical problem with the extractor. Maybe it was making a weird noise, shaking too much, or one of the baskets wasn't spinning. Tell them what happened, how you figured out what was wrong, and how you fixed it.
Okay, so it's not just about fixing it, but about explaining how I figured it out.
Exactly. You could say something like, I was extracting honey one time when I heard this loud clunking sound coming from the extractor. I shut it down right away so it wouldn't get any worse and tried to figure out where the noise was coming from. Turns out one of the arms holding the basket had come loose. I grabbed a wrench and tightened the bolts to make sure it was secure. I did a test run to make sure it was fixed, and then we were back in business.
That's a great example. I'm showing them I can spot the problem, fix it, and get things running smoothly again.
Exactly. And you're showing you can think on your feet and use your knowledge of the equipment to come up with practical solutions.
This is really helpful. I'm feeling much more confident about those tricky interview questions now.
That's great to hear. Remember, practice makes perfect. And with RoleCatcher's AI feedback, you can really polish your answers and go into that interview feeling confident and clear.
I'm definitely going to use RoleCatcher. It sounds like a must-have for anyone getting ready for an interview, especially in a specialized field like honey extraction.
It can make a huge difference. By analyzing those job descriptions and giving you personalized feedback, it helps you show off your skills and experience in a way that hiring managers will really appreciate.
Okay, we've talked about a lot of things. Technical skills, problem solving, quality control, and safety. Is there anything else we should cover to make sure I'm totally ready to nail this interview?
Let's talk about the future, what you want to do with your career, and how this job fits into your plans. That career guide we mentioned before talks about different career paths for honey extractors.
That's a good point. I want them to know that I'm not just looking for any job, but that I'm really interested in building a career in this field. What kind of questions should I expect about that?
They might ask you about your long-term career goals or where you see yourself in 5 years. This is your chance to show them you're ambitious and that this job fits into your goals.
Okay, so it's not just about what I can do for them, but also about what this opportunity means for my career.
Exactly. You don't need to have everything planned out perfectly, but you should have a general idea of where you want to go. For example, you could say, I'm really passionate about honey extraction, and I want to learn and grow in this field. I'm especially interested in quality control and finding ways to improve things. In the future, I'd love to be in charge of a team or even start my own honey production business.
That's a great way to show them I'm ambitious and that I'm interested in both the technical and business sides of the industry.
Precisely. You're showing them you think ahead and have a clear vision for your career.
This is incredibly helpful. I feel much more prepared and confident to not just answer their questions, but also show them how excited I am about this field.
That's great to hear. Remember, your passion is contagious. Let it shine through, and you'll definitely make a good impression.
I'm feeling the buzz. I can't wait to put all this great advice into practice.
And don't forget to use RoleCatcher to fine-tune your answers and practice how you say them. It's a secret weapon for your job search.
I won't. I'm excited to see how RoleCatcher can help me improve my interview skills.
Awesome. With the right preparation and tools, you'll be well on your way to landing your dream job as a honey extractor.
I'm ready for the next part of our deep dive. Let's hear it. We're back for the last part of our honey extractor deep dive. After going through all this, I feel way more ready to tackle those interview questions.
It's been pretty interesting, right? We've talked about all sorts of things, like how the extraction process actually works and the details of safety and quality control.
Yeah, for sure. And I've got to say, I'm amazed by how much expertise it takes to be a good honey extractor. It's not just about running machines. It's a skill that requires being precise, having knowledge, and being really passionate about honey.
You've got that right. A skilled honey extractor is super valuable to any honey operation. They make sure the extraction goes smoothly and efficiently, maintain high standards, and ultimately deliver a top-notch product to the people buying it.
Speaking of consumers, I've been thinking about how the demand for organic and sustainable produced honey is growing. How can I show the interviewer that I'm aware of these trends?
That's a great point. Consumers are getting more and more picky about where their food comes from and how it's made. If you can show that you understand organic beekeeping and sustainable methods, it'll definitely make you stand out.
Okay, so when they ask about my experience or how I approach honey extraction, how can I bring up those organic and sustainable aspects?
You can mention any experience you have with organic beekeeping practices like natural pest control or avoiding certain chemicals. You can also talk about how you know about sustainable extraction methods that are good for the bees and the environment.
Like, could I say something like, I'm really into sustainable beekeeping and honey production. At my last job, we did things to minimize disturbing the bees during collection and extraction. We also focused on using environmentally friendly cleaners and tried to use less energy during the process.
Perfect example. You're showing them you get it and that you're all about responsible honey production. Hiring managers love it when candidates are aware of trends and really care about sustainability.
This is great advice. I feel like I can not only answer their questions, but also have a real conversation with them about the parts of honey extraction that I'm passionate about.
That's the spirit. Remember, an interview isn't just a test. It's a chance to connect with the hiring manager, show off your personality, and let your excitement shine through.
And speaking of showing off my best self, how can RoleCatcher help me fine-tune my answers and make sure I'm making a good impression?
RoleCatcher's great for that.
Wow.
It goes beyond just looking at the job description. It gives you feedback on your answers so you can make them clear, concise, and powerful.
So it's like having a coach to help me sound better and deliver my answers well.
Exactly. It can analyze what you say, find any weak spots, and give you suggestions for improvement. It can even point out key words from the job description that you can use in your answers to show you're a good fit for the role.
That's amazing. It takes the guesswork out of getting ready for the interview and makes me feel confident that I'm doing my best.
That's right. And remember, the more you practice with RoleCatcher, the more comfortable and natural you'll sound during the interview.
I am definitely going to use RoleCatcher. It seems like a super helpful tool for anyone looking for a job, not just for specialized roles like Honey Extractor.
You're right. It can be used for any job interview to help you tailor your answers and present yourself well.
That's fantastic. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of honey extractors, what are the most important things you want our listeners to take away from this?
Definitely. Preparation is key. Take the time to really research the job, practice your answers to common questions, and use tools like RoleCatcher to polish your responses and boost your confidence.
And don't forget to show your passion. When you're genuinely excited about something, it shows, and it'll make a big impression on the hiring manager.
Absolutely. And lastly, remember that an interview is a two-way street. It's not just about you answering questions, but also about you asking thoughtful questions to show that you're curious and engaged.
Those are great tips. I'm feeling much more prepared and confident to go into that interview and showcase my skills and my passion for this awesome field.
That's what we were hoping for. We wish you the best of luck with your job search.
And to everyone listening, thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of honey extractors. We hope you found these insights and tips helpful. Remember, with the right preparation and a little bit of enthusiasm, you can achieve anything you set your mind to. Happy extracting.